The first steam-powered vessel to cross the Atlantic was named the Savannah. At the time, she was another American dream come true. A curious relic by today's standards, she nevertheless marked an important milestone in United States maritime history. A short century later, another dream moves to reality. In the words of President Eisenhower, I have today directed the Atomic Energy Commission and the Department of Commerce to proceed as rapidly as possible with the design and construction of the first nuclear-powered merchant ship. The President said, this new vessel will be a floating laboratory, the forerunner of atomic merchant ships which will one day unite the nations of the world in peaceful trade. A bold idea, signaling the start of another mighty endeavor for the American shipping industry, a work dedicated to the firm belief that the atom shall work for man's benefit. And so it has begun. Contracts are let, scores of details attended to, and the ship that was but a dream leaves the drawing boards and begins to take shape. With an urgency born of interest and firm purpose, thousands prepare for the birthday of the nuclear ship Savannah. From the beginning, the word is full speed ahead. The Savannah is to be a ship of beauty and grace, a passenger cargo ship, a sleek vessel whose only giveaway to radically new functions and capabilities is the atomic symbol amidships. Within her modern hull is one of the most advanced power plants in maritime history, an atomic reactor. The heart of the Savannah's power plant is to be a nuclear reactor of the pressurized water type. In a power plant of this kind, intense pressures are generated and there cannot be a flaw. Before the engineers even think about a final product, precise tests on materials and components are conducted. Testing and more testing is paramount. As in devices and machines of all kinds, the end product is no better than any one of its parts. And so everything from pins and bolts to boiler tubes is constantly scrutinized. By means of special dies, the boiler coils are tested for leaks. When a spot of red shows through the white, that coil is rejected immediately. When a component meets the rigid standards, it earns the OK tag. Machinists and engineers contribute their talents to the Savannah. Rods which hold the fuel elements for the reactor are extruded to close tolerances. Pellets of uranium compound slightly enriched with U-235 are punched out prior to their insertion into the fuel rods. The pellets are loaded in carefully measured quantities into fuel charges or rods. The ends of the rods are welded, sealing in their powerful contents against the time when their great energy will be unleashed to drive the Savannah's turbines. The Atomic Energy Division of Babcock and Wilcox in Lynchburg, Virginia, has the vital job of reactor development. Here, loaded rods are inserted into a critical experiment facility prior to a power check. In the control room, an engineer flicks a switch, and the atom goes to work for the first time for the merchant marine. As water is let in, the reactor becomes critical. All facets of the reactor operation, of course, are carefully controlled. come the control rods and up comes the power. Power eventually needed in the magnitude of 22,000 horsepower. The strength to drive the Savannah along the trade routes of the world. This is what must be done, day in, day out, as nimble brains and complex machines work to harness this power. Power for peace. In Ohio, a giant steel mill is busy, forming the pressure vessel that will contain the Savannah's power. With the seeming ease of a baker kneading bread, a huge press forces 8 inches of steel into a vessel cap. To form the wall of the vessel, giant rollers make white-hot steel into a perfect cylinder. Because corrosion is an ever-present menace in any machine, the metal in the Savannah's pressure vessel is clad with stainless steel 1/4 of an inch thick. On it rolls, the know-how of industry, bent to the task of turning out a history-making product, building a dream into reality, the world's first nuclear-powered merchant ship. The Savannah will take to the water in 1959, and she will have her sea trials in the spring of 1960. Even as the ship's unique components take shape in yards and factories around the United States, other scientists and technicians are looking ahead to her safe operation. In the harbors, the channels are checked for tide effects and set and drift of currents to determine the proper harbor conditions necessary for receiving the new vessel, to be sure that the ports of the world will be ready for the new Queen of the Seas. On National Maritime Day, May 22nd, 1958, the great behind-the-scenes effort in the conception of the Savannah is given evidence by a history-making public event, the laying of the keel at the yards of the New York Shipbuilding Corporation. Mrs. Richard M. Nixon, wife of the Vice President of the United States, is guest of honor for the occasion. A happy, exciting occasion that tells the world that this really is to be, that the Savannah is on the ways. The then chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, Admiral Lewis L. Strauss, keynotes the event with these words.
The thousands of years that men have sailed the seven seas have seen scores upon scores of thousands of ships built by shipwrights on every coast of the world, ships rowed by galley slaves, ships wind-driven by towering sails, and ships powered by the burning of coal and oil. And the oceans have grown familiar with them all, but not with this ship. The Savannah will be a new thing under the sun. Her like has never been seen before, and she will be the progenitrix of new argosies, of ships with a new grace, a new beauty, and a new and undreamed of efficiency.
The justifiable pride in the realization of this great maritime achievement is amplified by the chairman of the House Merchant Marine and Fisheries Committee, Congressman Herbert C. Bonner.
Within the next few minutes, the United States of America will have resolutely stepped across the threshold of time into the nuclear age on the sea lanes of the world. In our action here today, we are demonstrating our sincerity and our belief that men of goodwill can forge tools of peace from the forces of destruction.
Befitting the role always reserved for the distaff side in the birth of new ships, Mrs. Nixon takes her part in the birth of the Savannah.
This nuclear ship for trade and commerce is another way in which our nation extends the hand of friendship to all the world. A strong and modern American merchant marine is proof of our nation's resolve to support those who yearn for liberty and the dignity of man. May the NS Savannah proclaim on this Maritime Day 1958 blessings of freedom and justice for all people of all nations. May its voyages under the stars and stripes ever be pleasant, smooth, and prosperous. Thank you very much.
Moving to the climax of the ceremony, Mrs. Nixon is given a radioactive magic wand by Mr. Edward L. Teal, president of New York Shipbuilding, to start the machinery that will swing the keel into place. Above the men who dream, who plan, who build, towers the great steel keel, herald of a great new age in merchant shipping. For supervisor and worker, for all hands, there is the satisfaction that comes from a good beginning for a worthy project. The mammoth job that has begun will soon be finished. In 1959, the ship will part the waters, and in 1960, the first nuclear merchant ship in the world will be on the high seas. Operated by the States Marine Lines, the United States nuclear ship Savannah.